John sat silently in the old Toyota Corolla, his fingers tapping slowly on the steering wheel. In front of him was the parking lot of John's trucks. The very first, and most important, branch in the chain of garages and truck dealerships he had built over the past 15 years. The trucks stood neatly lined under the fading afternoon sun, their polished exteriors gleaming, windows catching the sunlight as if to declare, "This place is successful." But John knew well that appearances could be deceiving. For the past 6 months, while sales reports remained steady, the number of positive reviews across platforms had been dropping at an alarming rate. Some customers still praised the friendly staff and good vehicles, but many others left behind complaints, hidden fees, forced warranties, and unclear consultations. At first, John brushed them off as individual perceptions, but that uneasy feeling had grown into a steady knock in his mind, persistent and impossible to ignore. He had built his business on a simple promise: fix cars. Sell trucks, do it with heart. If this place was betraying that promise, he needed to know, and not from a report on paper. That's why today, John wasn't driving his usual Mercedes, wasn't wearing a crisp shirt, or carrying the watch worth a month of an employee's salary. Instead, he had on a faded t-shirt, worn-out jeans, 3-day stubble, and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. Today's alias: Mike Thompson, a construction worker looking to buy a used truck. No one on the new team at this branch had ever met him in person. John had left the day-to-day operations to the management team while he expanded the chain into nearby cities. That absence had now become the perfect disguise. He took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped out, deliberately moving a bit slowly, with a slight limp like someone just off a long shift. He didn't need to be an award-winning actor, just honest. Like any regular customer. Because sometimes, to find the truth, you have to disappear from your own role. "Hey there, I'm Tom. What can I help you with today?" The young salesman's voice rang out brightly just as John stepped onto the lot. Tom's face was open and cheerful, his smile picture perfect, like it had been practiced many times. John gave a slight nod, keeping his voice gravelly and deliberately lowered. "Name's Mike. Looking for a tough truck for construction work. Got about 35 grand. Hoping to find something worth every penny." Tom immediately led him down the lot, occasionally glancing quickly toward the office window, where Dan Reynolds, the newly promoted sales manager, stood watching like a hawk. John took note of every gesture. A silver Ford F-150 was brought out. The truck was nearly new, with a solid engine and solid specs, the exact model that sold best at this branch. But then Tom let something slip. The listed price is 37 grand, but that includes the special protection package, Carter's protection package. Only available here. John frowned slightly. That package was supposed to be optional, not automatically bundled into the price. But he didn't show any suspicion. He simply nodded, asked to see the engine, checked the tires, and agreed to a test drive. Everything followed procedure, too much so, and it was precisely that smoothness that made John feel like something was off. When the two returned to the office to begin paperwork, the atmosphere shifted. Tom looked more nervous now, hands trembling slightly as he typed the data into the system, just as he was about to mention a documentation processing fee. Another voice cut in nearby, tense. Frustrated, John tilted his head, pretending to study the price sheet, but his ears were focused on every word from the next desk over. A customer, middle-aged, wearing a local delivery company uniform, was arguing. His face was flushed red, hands gripping a stack of papers tightly. A small photo slipped out, a picture of 3 children around a birthday cake. "We calculated everything down to the last dollar. The last guy told me it was 32 grand. Now you're saying it's 35 because of some made-up fees? I don't have an extra 3 grand lying around." John turned to Tom and asked quietly, "What's going on with that guy?" Tom fumbled, about to answer, when Dan stepped out, suit sharp, hair slicked back, smile perfectly measured, but the eyes were cold. "I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson. All fees are clearly stated at the end of the contract. You should have read more carefully before signing." John felt his chest tighten. Dan wasn't just dodging responsibility. He was implying that this customer, a working-class man, was simply ignorant. And at that moment, everything became painfully clear. The stench of manipulation and deceit, thick in the very office John had once trusted to represent integrity. John excused himself, pretending he needed the restroom. In truth, he wanted to quietly observe how the showroom, his original foundation, was truly operating. He walked calmly through each section, sharp eyes noting every seemingly harmless detail, an averted gaze, a forced smile, a half-true, half-deceptive sales pitch. In the finance area, he overheard two staff members whispering, "That customer was way too easy. No wonder Dan made us slip the insurance package in." By the time they realize it's too late to cancel, John turned his face away, maintaining an indifferent look, but inside, a chill ran down his spine. He had sworn that John's trucks would never use dirty tricks to pressure customers. And yet here it was, his first showroom. The one he built brick by brick, violating every founding principle. Back at the desk, John casually asked Tom, the young salesman handling the paperwork for Mike Thompson. "Hey Tom, that protection package Dan mentioned earlier, is that mandatory?" Tom glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Technically number, but if we remove it, Dan sometimes forces us to lower the trade-in offer or tells the bank the file is high risk. A few of us got hit like that, so no one dares to push back." John nodded slowly. The answer confirmed what he feared. This wasn't a one-off mistake, it was a system. Manipulated intentionally and enforced through subtle threats. He continued walking through the showroom, discreetly recording conversations, and snapping photos of price sheets showing vague, invisible fees. Each time a customer hesitated or furrowed their brow, he listened closely. Most were being pushed into a corner, sign or lose your deposit. An elderly woman stood at the reception desk, flipping through her paperwork. Her son had just taken out a loan to buy a used truck. But now she had discovered a market adjustment fee of nearly $2. She tried to explain to the staff, "My grandson said $15,000 was enough. Why is it $17,500 now?" The reply came cold and flat. "That's the new policy. Ma'am, if you don't agree, we can't proceed." John passed by silently, eyes fixed on the disappointment on the woman's face. What he was witnessing wasn't just misconduct, it was a betrayal of trust. And trust, for a business built on reputation, is its greatest asset. When he returned to Tom's desk, John let out a quiet breath. "I need to speak to Dan Reynolds." Privately, Tom blinked in surprise but nodded. The confrontation was coming, but before the storm hit, John already had everything he needed to flip the entire game. As Tom quietly shut the glass door to the manager's office behind him, Dan Reynolds looked up from his computer screen. The flicker of annoyance in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a courteous smile. "Mr. Thompson, right? Tom said you had a few questions about the fees?" John sat down across from him, shoulders slightly relaxed, voice even and polite, the tone of a working man trying to keep things civil. "That's right, I just noticed a few unclear charges. Also saw another customer getting pretty upset out there. So, it got me a little concerned." Dan leaned back in his chair, his smile shifting into something more familiar, calculated and slick. "I understand. Let me be real with you, this is business. Every showroom has a few tricks to maximize profit. Protection plans, processing fees, market adjustment charges. We call it the premium experience package. Technically not mandatory, but if a customer refuses, they might run into a few minor issues getting their financing approved." John stayed silent, discreetly switching on the voice recorder hidden in his jacket pocket. Dan carried on, growing increasingly confident. "You know, most people buying trucks are just regular folks. They don't read everything, they trust a smile, and by the time they realize what's happened, they've already signed. And then, it's too late." John gave a slight nod, his voice low and calm. "What about the owner of this place, Mr. John? Does he know about all this?" Dan burst out laughing, the sound jarring in the quiet office. "John? That guy's too busy opening new branches, counting his money, doing PR. As long as the reports show profit, he doesn't care what goes on. I run this showroom the way it gets results, and you're seeing those results right now." He leaned in slightly, dropping his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between us, I make more off the books stuff than my actual salary. Protection packages, custom add-ons, upgraded insurance, each one kicks back a percentage. A few of us on the inside know how to divvy it up. Right then, John slowly removed the baseball cap from his head, took off his sunglasses, and stood up. His voice was no longer that of Mike Thompson, but of John, the owner of John's Trucks. And now I know everything. Dan. Dan's face turned ghostly white. He sprang up, lips trembling. You're? The guy you said was too busy counting money to care about the showroom. But today, I sat here, listened to every word you said, and recorded all of it. John pressed a button. From the phone in his hand, Dan's voice rang out, clear as day. Customers don't read carefully. By the time they realize it's already signed, the boss only cares about opening new branches. I make more off the books than from my salary. A heavy silence fell over the room. But John wasn't finished. He walked over to the desk and pressed the intercom button. All staff, please report to the showroom floor. Emergency meeting. In less than 2 minutes, the entire team had gathered around the reception desk, eyes turning toward the manager's office as the glass door swung open. John stepped out and stood tall before them. His eyes shone with disappointment. I'm John, and today, I've seen things I never thought possible. He held up his phone and played the recording for everyone to hear. Each sentence from Dan hit like a hammer to the pride of a team who once believed they were working at a place built on integrity. When the recording ended, John turned to Dan. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Dan tried to shout. You'll regret this. I'm the reason this place hits its sales numbers. John simply replied, calm and firm. I'd rather lose money than lose honor. 2 security guards stepped forward. Dan flailed and resisted, but was quickly removed, leaving behind a heavy, echoing silence. John turned back to face the rest of the staff. Starting tomorrow, this place will be different. We either rebuild from the truth, or we shut it down. At the far end of the room, a single pair of hands began to clap. It was Mark Henderson. John turned and met the emotional gaze of the father of 3. Still holding the bundle of used truck purchase paperwork, John smiled. Mr. Henderson, I think we should go over your contract again. And I believe that trust isn't something that should ever come with a surcharge. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the showroom windows of John's Trucks, but it wasn't like any morning before. The stifling atmosphere was gone. So were the forced smiles of those who only cared about hitting sales targets. In their place was a quiet sense of expectation, hope for a new beginning. John walked in, not through the back like during his undercover days, but straight through the front door. A plain button-down shirt, a steady gaze, and a small sign in his hand. Starting again, with the truth. He rolled his desk out from the private office and placed it in the center of the showroom. Every employee could see it clearly. The boss wasn't above them anymore. He was right here, with them, with the customers. He opened the morning meeting. I didn't come here just to fire Dan. I came to take responsibility. Everything that happened, even if I didn't directly cause it, happened on my watch. A long silence followed. I'm not punishing anyone for telling the truth. If you speak up, I will back you. If you were pressured into doing wrong, now is the time to make it right. Today, we begin a full review of every sales record from the past 6 months. Then he turned to Tom, the young salesman who had bravely come forward. Tom, I want you to lead the new Customer Rights Task Force. You'll be the first person any customer comes to with a concern. Can you take that on? Tom froze for a moment, then nodded, eyes glassy. I'll give it everything I've got. Mr. John. That same week, the office was transformed into a complaint resolution center. Customers who had been charged questionable fees were invited back. They were listened to, their paperwork reviewed, and their money refunded. A truck driver came in with his wife. They had been charged nearly $4 in gold package service fees they never truly understood. When they were refunded and heard John personally apologize, the wife burst into tears. I thought we'd never get that money back in this lifetime. It wasn't just about refunds. John also invited Josh, a former employee fired by Dan for being too honest, back to head the ethical sales training program. Standing before a room full of new hires, Josh said clearly, "We're not here to sell trucks. We're here to build trust. A person who buys a car today, if they feel confident in us, they'll come back. And they'll bring their family." Not long after, local media began covering the remarkable turnaround at John's Trucks. The headlines didn't just celebrate, "Undercover Boss Exposes Corruption." They emphasized something deeper. This showroom wasn't just fixing cars, it was restoring public trust. A scholarship fund was established, called the Henderson Fund, to support the college dreams of loyal customers' children. Mark's daughter was the first recipient. 6 months later, the showroom hosted a community day. The lot was packed with locals, families, former and new customers alike. There was music, free food, a play area for kids. John moved through the crowd, shaking hands, chatting. He stopped when he saw an elderly couple looking at a brand new pickup truck. Tom was with them, explaining each charge in a clear voice, as if there was nothing to hide. The couple nodded in satisfaction. They weren't just seeing a nice truck, they were seeing rare honesty. As the day came to an end, John stood in the same spot where he once parked the beat-up Corolla during his undercover mission. Now, the lot before him glowed under the lights. Each vehicle lined up like a promise of fair price. Real quality, no deceit. Mark Henderson walked over and placed a hand on John's shoulder. "You've done something not many would dare. John, you didn't just fix a business, you fixed a broken system." John smiled. Sometimes, to rebuild the right way, you have to be willing to tear down what's wrong. He turned back inside, his hand resting on a newly framed photo on the wall. A picture of his father beside the first garage, taken in 1982. Next to it, carved in wood, hung the motto, "Reputation doesn't come from advertising. It comes from how you make things right." 1 year after John Carter went undercover at his own showroom, John's Trucks was no longer just a name associated with repairs and truck sales. It had become a symbol of something many believed lost in modern business: integrity. Sales had recovered, not skyrocketing like during Dan's era, but stronger and more sustainable than ever before. More importantly, the rate of returning customers had reached a record high, not because of discounts, but because of trust. On local television, a 15-minute special aired with the title, "The Hidden Boss and the Turning Point of Trust." The report closed with footage of John standing beside his employees, helping clean up after the community fair. No one called him boss anymore, just John. But for John, the journey wasn't over. At a strategic meeting, he posed a question: if one showroom can change like this, why can't we scale it? And so, the Trust First program was launched, a set of ethical business standards for the auto repair and sales industry. Personally developed by John, it included 100% transparency in pricing and fees, staff training based on values, not just skills, policies to protect customers from pressure tactics and fine print tricks, an independent complaint channel, bypassing direct management. Not long after, businesses in the industry began approaching John to learn from his model. Some former competitors who had mocked him for putting on a show were now either silent or trying to copy it. One late afternoon, after everyone had gone home, John sat alone in his office. On his desk was a postcard. The front showed a young woman in her graduation gown. On the back, it read, "I'm Emily Henderson, Mark's daughter. If it weren't for you, I might never have made it to college. I'm not just grateful for the truck my dad bought, but for the fact that you gave our family a reason to believe fairness still exists. Thank you. Thank you for stepping up when it mattered most." John placed the postcard on the bookshelf next to the photo of his father. No plaques, no awards, just that. It was never about the trucks. It was never about the numbers. It was about restoring trust, one customer, one family, one worker at a time. People who once thought their voices didn't matter, finally being heard. And the greatest legacy John left behind couldn't be found in any accounting ledger, but in the eyes of every employee greeting a customer at the door. With quiet pride, we're not perfect, but we're honest.